Community Shield is the big one, really, the curtain raiser for the Premier League sides. And it wasn't a disappointing game at all. It was quite an exciting end-to-end, anything but a friendly kind of game, really. And two brand new strikers on the pitch, Darwin Nunez coming off the bench and Erling Haaland, both adding a very different dimension to each of those teams who are pretty well established as well. So fascinating to watch. Miles, what was your takeaway from the game?
I think it was a very good Community Shield. You often see those games kind of be a bit of a slog and then 0-0, but Liverpool and Man City kept their normal competitive nature, and that really helped. One team was a lot further along in their development and obviously a lot further through their pre-season than the other, and that showed. Liverpool weren't perfect. They looked sloppy at times in certain areas, but City just did not look ready for it. And particularly with a change in system, like you mentioned, it was so clear that they had just gone a year without playing with a number 9. The amount of times Haaland made a run and no one was looking for that run and the ball came across the pitch instead, that's going to be something that they've really got to identify and work on quickly. But bear in mind, the last 2 seasons, City have not started quickly. It's taken them time to find their stride. Chelsea were running away with it last year, and then City come back and they find their feet. And I have no doubt that will happen. But for a team that has spent a whole season without a central striker and then ended the game with 2 central strikers on the pitch, they didn't really look like they knew how to locate that. And that really was the difference between the two teams. A lot of people have talked about how great Nunez was. His movement was strong. He took his goal well. I thought the rest of the game he was terrible. He probably should have scored 3 at least. Where he won the penalty, he's very fortunate because he's headed the ball towards goal and it's gone across the 6-yard box. It was terrible. And there was one where Henderson played a ball through to him. And granted, like every pass Henderson played in this game, it felt like he overhit it and didn't find it perfectly. But a one-on-one, he hits Ederson instead. And you think it will take him some time to get that sharpness. But that goal is a monkey off his back. All of a sudden now, there is positive talk about him. He had that friendly against Man United where he was kind of mocked. Then he went and scored 4 against Leipzig, and now he's got a goal in English football. So that's a big weight off his shoulders. Whereas Haaland now feels like the guy with a point to prove. And that's probably harsh because he's such a world-class footballer. But that's how it goes in the English media with football, and they'll have to get used to that quickly.
Interesting to see the dynamics change in both teams, Dave. I mean, they were focal points, weren't they? City struggled with that extra focal point because they never have one, like Miles was saying. But Liverpool seemed to embrace having a forward to actually find, on the end of long balls, someone that they've not really had before either. I mean, there was Mane who, brought so much to that team. But the dimension that Nunez brought, I thought it needed some work. It's not perfect. It's not the finished article by any means, but it's definitely something that Jurgen Klopp can work with, Dave, surely.
Let's not pretend that this is something that's completely new to Liverpool. Seeing how direct that they can be over all these diagonal balls, these balls over the top that we've seen the likes of, Salah and Mane chasing through onto. It's too early to say how good he's going to be. I think, like Miles said, he's going to need time to adapt to English football because it's going to be a completely different kettle of fish. Like you mentioned there, I think there are probably there's a few flaws in his technical game. I think he's been mocked a little bit. Everyone's been saying he's the new Lukaku to come into the league, but I mean, let's not forget he's very young. He's still got a lot to offer. He will definitely score goals in this Liverpool team, just for the sheer amount of chances that they do create.
I think the Premier League's a much better league for having them in, especially Haaland, who's just one of the best, isn't he? But I don't think this game's indicative of what we're going to see too much from them at all. And I think it's hard to read into the Community Shield generally, isn't it, as a kind of an indicator of how the season's going to go for the 2 best teams by far in the league. I suppose that leads me on to my question for you, Miles. Does this pull them further away, having these players? We haven't seen some of the players that they've signed yet. Calvin Phillips, don't know what dimension he's going to add to City as well. But I thought they did look a cut above. Like there was a different dimension there that needed some polishing, but it's evolving the teams further. They're not sticking to the same tried and trusted script anymore. Guardiola's going for a player he doesn't normally go for. Same with Klopp to an extent, both very young as well, 22, 23. How much do you read into this? I mean, it was weird as well. It was at the King Power Stadium, wasn't it? So that felt like a different occasion as well. But what did you read into it, if anything?
There were definitely some key takeaways for me on the game on where both sides need to develop. As you said, we've seen Guardiola kind of clash with number nines before and not really operate with them in the way that you would expect. So it will be interesting to see him adjust to having such a focal point in attack and someone who is a world-class superstar already, even if he is as young as he is in Haaland. I think it's funny because there's been a lot of talk on the two number nines, but not much talk about the one who did score for Man City. I thought Julian Alvarez looked really, really good when he came on. He took his goal well. It was a good striker's instinct. And he could be a massive part for Man City's success this year. I think it sounds odd to say, but seeing Man City line up, tactically they need to change, but their squad is ready for this season. Definitely. They won't need much more business. Maybe a left back if they're looking at Cucurella. Liverpool, on the other hand, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday who's a Liverpool fan. Unfortunately, yeah, I am friends with Liverpool fans, even if I try and avoid it. And one thing that I really took away from this game was I just did not think their midfield looked up to it in certain times. Thiago is a fantastic player. Fabinho is a fantastic player. It looked a step above Henderson, in my opinion. And the other thing that really stood out to me was the same old argument that we have all the time at how poor Trent Alexander-Arnold is defensively. Either, if you can, Mike, insert the video into this, or we'll put it on the Twitter or something, and just watch Trent's defending for City's goal. It is absolutely shocking. He loses the run of Foden in the first place, then covers the goal line, but thinks it's offside, so literally stops playing and turns his back on the play. While Adrian is fighting for the ball with Foden, Alexander-Arnold's not even looking, and then all of a sudden the ball's in the back of the net. Because he doesn't have a defensive instinct. What he does have is an incredibly creative instinct. That's what Liverpool are missing in their midfield right now. It seems so obvious to me that at some point in his career, if Liverpool can bring a new right back in and make Trent Alexander-Arnold Jordan Henderson's replacement as a deeper lying playmaker, that will benefit everyone.